Hi, for the activity for class today, first I'm going to talk about John Nash. His diagnosis, it's schizophrenia. He has clear signs of delusions, hallucinations. He has negative symptoms such as anhedonia. His level of functioning is below average, and this can be seen when he's unable to take care of his baby, and at one point he's unable to take care of himself. Then he gets a little bit better, a lot better actually. Also, he presents these hallucinations and delusions for years, ensuring that it's not a schizophreniform disorder, and it is schizophrenia. Also, to rule out schizoaffective disorder, he presents no signs of mood disorders like mania or bipolar or depressive affective disorder. That's why I said that it's not schizoaffective and schizophrenia. Also, there's no sign of substance abuse, which rules out the psychosis to be caused because of this. An example of this is of his active phase is when he hugs Marcy and Charles, which are two of the hallucinations that he gets. His drive is, like, speaking of Freud and drive, his drive is mainly, it's a drive of life or love and affection. This is shown because it's stronger than the ego and the reality, therefore the drive is not repressed. So when he hugs Marcy and Charles, he does not repress at all his desire and his drive for affection, and he just does it. He hallucinates that he's hugging his friends and his sort of niece, and this happens. So to be a little bit clearer, his drive and the drive is not repressed. Therefore, he's able to hug and see his hallucinations. This happens when the id takes over the representation of the hallucination. So the ego is not able to displace the drive for affection or life. Thus, it is conquered by the internal drive, and it has no respect for reality whatsoever, and it's able to get the hallucination and fulfill this drive. Also, for the third part of the exercise, it asks for the reality and pleasure principles, and to give an example. So, in case of John Nash, for the reality principle, it can be shown almost at the end when he sees Charles, Marcy, and Parker. Yeah, Parker at the end, and he just looks at them and stares at them. I think he's on campus, and he's able to recognize that they're there, but he doesn't engage with them, so he knows that they're not real, and he just lets it go and lets his situation just walk by. This confirms that his reality principle, that he's able to understand the reality and ignore whatever he knows that is not real. In the contrary, at a point in his life, he just goes and fulfills this pleasure principle, which is when he starts almost at the beginning of the movie, he starts chatting with Charles in his room, and Charles comes and he's super drunk and just having a conversation, and he's laughing, and with this, he's able to fulfill his pleasure principle, which is mostly of love and affection and, I don't know, maybe attention. He fulfills his desires by talking to Charles. So he goes along with this principle instead of the reality one. So for the third part of the exercise, it asks for the first and secondary process of thought. The first one is associated with the id, which is childlike and fantasy-like, not very logical not logical actually, and it goes and it follows instant gratification. And an example of this would be leaving the baby in the bathtub, or not necessarily leaving the baby on the bathtub, but following and going with his hallucination that tells him that he has to go and that he has to do some other things, and instead of actually taking care of his child. So he ignores completely reality, and he goes and follows all these illogical and fantasy-like thoughts. So for the secondary processes of thought would be, these are the ones that are associated with the ego and the more logical sides of processes of thought and thinking. So this would be also going back to the previous example when John Nash is focuses more on the fact that he knows that his hallucinations are no longer or were never real, so he ignores them, and for this he's able to focus on the consequences and not on instant gratification, not just following or going to his imaginary or hallucinatory friends. Instead, he ignores this, puts this aside, and follows his secondary processes of thought, which are more logical, consistent, and are more associated with the ego. And for John Nash, this would be it for the exercise.